Hi, I'm Lin Bridgeford. Welcome to Show and Tell with Lin. Today we're going to be talking about skulls. So this is a skull that I got to be able to show my patients, and the kids love it, things about the skull and how this all comes apart, where if we take the frontal bone off, you can see that big red bone at the back, that's the sphenoid, forms part of the eye socket, very important in babies. Take the top of the head off, and then we can see inside, you've got the ear canal here in the temporal, you've got very important centers in here. This bone in the baby is in 4 parts, and then it joins up by 1 year old. So we need to get all the membranes really nice before that time, so that they form nicely together. I didn't think this was such an accurate one, but actually you can see the indentation of blood vessels and nerves. A more accurate version, if we look at that sphenoid bone in a replica of a real skull. And we can see how they join together, all these tiny little sutures, joints that go together. And there's sometimes pivot points, there's a pivot point there, so this all moves. People never used to believe the skull moves, but it does. And just over there you can see an indent where a thing called the middle meningeal artery goes. Now if that's tight, maybe from a bang on the head, you might get migraines. So it's very interesting to have a look and see how these things all go together. If we look at the base of the skull, the occiput, and the sacrum, they actually join together by this blue piece of ribbon, which we'll call the dural tube inside the spine, and they move well together. There's a natural movement through the body that we feel as trained cranial osteopaths. If that's not moving well, then you know there's an issue, and every step you take is going to hurt somewhere because it's not working well. So we look at all these movements. When we look at the skull, we look at the bones. So a few stories about skulls. I will show you first on the coloured skull because it's easier to hold it up. And I had a kid come in with glue ear, and they wanted to put grommets in a teenager, which I thought sounded kind of gruesome. So this is the bone, the temporal bone that the ear sits in. The occiput attaches with it, very important suture there, sutures where things join, and the parietal on the top. I'll take these separately to show you. Nothing much came up in the history. When I put my hands on, there's this thing where you listen to the tissues and the body talks, and sometimes it talks to me in pictures, sometimes I just get a sense. But I could sense in the tissues that there was a pressure. There's a little notch here in the movement that secures this bone. So if you get a hit on the top of the head, it kind of doesn't fall all the way through. Not that it would, but there's this pivot point. We have lots of these clever places in the skull. And it felt to me like that had been hit. That jams down into this bone, the temporal bone with the ear in it. And then you have on the back of it, the occiput, which has the spinal column in it. So what I could feel, there was a pressure there. So when I suggested that, they said, oh yes, he got hit on the top of the head at football a few months, 6 months before that. So 1 or 2 treatments, and there was no more need for grommets because we'd got everything moving nicely, and it wasn't a case of what I was told because they'd forgotten, they didn't think that was significant. But in knowing what happens in the body and what you feel, that jams up, this doesn't move, all these drainage points from the skull get blocked. So we need movement for everything to flow. Maybe it's just because I'm an osteopath, but I find skulls hugely fascinating when you look at them in detail, all the little nooks and crannies and how everything fits together, and they're all different. This is a replica of a 23-year-old female. Now this bone, the sphenoid, forms the back of the eye sockets. It might not look like it here, but the important bit where this meets the occiput, just in front of that there's a little groove. It's called the sella turcica, the Turkish saddle. In there are really important structures, the emotional centers, the mood centers, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the amygdala. And often I'll help people with emotional problems working with this area, but a very common one is pregnant women, especially in the last 3 months. They're not sleeping. Everything's growing, everything's attached to everything with fascia. work on this system, get the fascia releasing, but get this movement going that the hypothalamus and the pituitary can have some space to breathe and they start to sleep. Thank you so much for watching. If you find skulls interesting, send me a message in the comments section. I'll do my best to answer it and engage with you. Thank you so much.